The true story of the Amistad, beyond Spielberg's lens.
Welcome to a new episode of Celluloid Heart. Close your eyes and think of Steven Spielberg's film Amistad. You probably see Djimon Hounsou as Cinqué, shouting, "Give us free!" in an American courtroom. It is a powerful, epic Hollywood moment. But what if I told you that the true story of that man and his companions was, if possible, even more extraordinary and terrible than fiction? This isn't simple fact-checking. It is a journey into the dark spaces that cinema illuminated, but also distorted. Today we dismantle the white savior myth and give a voice back to the true protagonists, navigating through diplomatic blunders, impossible language barriers, and a homecoming that resembles nothing of a happy ending.
The horror before the revolt, the Tekora. To understand the fury of the revolt, we must take a step back. The Amistad was just a coastal schooner, a delivery van in the Cuban slave economy. The true horror, the one the film shows only in flashbacks, happened on the Tekora. Here, Sengbe Pieh, Cinqué's real name, and hundreds of others were packed into a space just over 3 feet high. They traveled chained in what slavers called spoon fashion, wedged into one another to maximize cargo. Sengbe wasn't a generic tribal warrior. He was a rice farmer, a father of 3, perhaps the son of a local chief. A man with a life, broken not by the jungle, but by a brutal bureaucracy that forged passports calling them Ladinos, legal slaves, instead of bozales, illegal new arrivals.
The sea strategy and the celestial deception. When the revolt breaks out, the film shows us chaos and violence. Reality was a surgical military operation. Sengbe and his lieutenants used a nail found on deck to free themselves and machetes to take command. But the real battle was psychological. The 2 Spaniards spared, Ruiz and Montes, enacted a desperate deception. By day, with the sun visible and machetes held to their throats, they sailed east, toward Africa. But by night, hoping the Africans didn't know how to read the stars, they veered north toward the United States. That zigzag route wasn't a mistake. It was a chess game played on the ocean, which led them straight into the freezing waters off Long Island.
Eta, Fili, Kiao, breaking the silence. Once in America, the insurmountable problem wasn't legal, it was linguistic. How do you defend someone if you don't even know what language they speak? Here, history surpasses the screenplay. Professor Josiah Gibbs of Yale didn't find an interpreter by magic. He went to the prison and learned to count to 10 in Mende. Eta, Fili, Kiao. Imagine the scene. A distinguished white professor walking for days on the noisy docks of New York, among longshoremen and sailors, obsessively repeating those numbers like a secular prayer. Eta, Fili, Kiao. Until, on the British ship HMS Buzzard, a young black sailor named James Covey raised his head and continued the sequence. Covey, a former slave freed by the British, became the keystone. Without those numbers recited to the wind on a pier, the Amistad case would have ended in silence.
In the film, Morgan Freeman plays Theodore Jodson, a wise former slave who helps the defense. He is a magnificent character. Too bad he never existed. His presence is a double-edged sword. It serves to show black activism, but paradoxically erases the real heroes. In reality, it was men like the Reverend James Pennington, and especially the fearless David Ruggles and his Vigilance Committee who protected the prisoners, raised funds, and kept public attention alive. Hollywood condensed an entire resistance movement into a single fictional character, simplifying a complex and vital political network.
A child, not a tyrant. The truth about Spain. One of the most curious aspects of the film is the representation of Queen Isabella II of Spain as a spoiled teenager deciding the fate of the empire. History tells us otherwise. In 1839, Isabella was 9 years old. She was a child, playing with dolls, not geopolitics. Spain was in chaos, torn apart by a brutal civil war. American President Van Buren didn't tremble at Spanish military power, which was collapsing. He trembled for Southern votes. It was an election year, and he feared that ruling in favor of the Africans would trigger the American Civil War 20 years early. The threat didn't come from Madrid, but from Virginia and Georgia.
The homecoming, ashes, and disillusionment. The film ends with a triumphant return to Africa. The music swells, the credits roll. But what happened next? The reality is heartbreaking. When Sengbe Pieh returned to his village in 1842, after 3 years of absence, he didn't find open arms. He found ashes. His village had been destroyed in a local war. His family gone, likely kidnapped and sold just like him. He never saw them again. And here we must debunk a cruel myth circulating online. Sengbe Pieh did not become a slave trader. This is a historical lie born from confusion with another survivor, William Brooks Tucker, who did take that dark path. Sengbe died in 1879 at the Christian mission, asking to be buried there. A tired man who had defeated the Supreme Court of the United States but had lost his world. The fragility of justice. The story of the Amistad is not the fairy tale of the American legal system working. It is the story of an anomaly, an unrepeatable alignment of luck, stubbornness, and politics. The Africans were not freed because the system hated slavery, but because technically, according to treaties, they were not slaves, but illegal merchandise. Sengbe Pieh and his companions sailed through ocean storms and legal storms, surviving both. Let us remember them not as passive symbols in a Spielberg film, but as complex men who fought to reclaim their humanity, paying a very high price.
If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like. Your comments are valuable. Celluloid Heart thanks you for listening and sees you at the next episode.